I'm Mike Costello, and I'd like to talk to you about some ideas that can enrich and change your life. In our church, we believe that we live in our minds and not in the world. Certainly, we live in the world. We live in the houses that we know as home. We drive the cars that we drive. We're the people we believe ourselves to be. But we know that we also live in our minds, and the outpicturing of what comes from our minds determines how we feel about the life that we live and how we see the world around us. We believe that everything is a creation of mind, and though the reality around us is certainly real, the cars and the houses and our lives, all of those things came into being through thought. We believe that all of the universe and life came through thought, and we know that from the Bible, in the book of Genesis, we're told that God called into creation this universe through thought, through the creative power of thought. I'm standing in a studio. There are people here, lights and cameras. You're watching me on a television. This studio and the cameras that are filming me right now were thought before they were created. By that I mean they were someone's idea. Someone had the idea, the seed thought, and from that seed thought, that was shared with others, who in turn created the things that we see, the camera, the studio, the television that you watch. Someone invented that television, but the television was created in mind before it came into reality. We believe that everything that we see is created by the power of mind, and the power of mind is the single most creative force that we have in this life. It's the way that we think that determines how we feel, and the way that we feel determines how the life that we live is led and how we are enriched or how we feel in the midst of this life experience. If we live in our minds and not in the world, we have to be very conscious and cautious of the creative power of mind, because every word that we say, every thought that we think is a creative force, and that creative force determines what the outpicturing or the life experience that we're going to have is. In your life and in my life, we're faced over and over with opportunities to change the way that we think. And if in reality the thoughts that we think create the environment that we have in our lives, then we indeed have the ability to change our way of thinking and to change our lives. As we're moving into a new year, and at this time of change for you and for me and for everyone, we look at opportunities to change the things that we don't like, to hold on to the things that we do like. And the important thing to remember in this process is that the way that you think, the way that I think about the experiences in life will create the environment that we have. In our church, we sing a song that says, "Words and thoughts have molding power, so let us careful be, knowing that we're building our eternity. Words and thoughts have molding power, so let us careful be, knowing that we're building our eternity." The thoughts that you think and that I think and that everyone in this world think creates the environment that we have and the life that we all experience. When you pick up a newspaper, how is it that your mind operates? What do you think? When you pick up the newspaper, do you see terrible experiences, awful things happening? Or do you see experiences that are taking place on planet Earth and know with your inner knowing, know with your conscious mind, with your thoughts, that you can impact what you're seeing, what you're reading about through your thought process? The collective thought process of this entire universe, or the collective thought process of one or two people, creates a phenomenon that creates like experiences. A lot of it can be looked at in terms of the fact that when we get one or two or three people in a room thinking in the same way, the direction of the thought in that room will change. For instance, if you have two or three people who are happy and are thinking and acting and behaving in a happy way, the environment in that room becomes happy. If you have two or three people in a room and one person is unhappy, one person is contentious, one person is negative, that person has the power and the ability to affect other people. And the other people in the room have a choice. They can be negative, as this individual is, or they can be positive. And the process is always one of choice. We have an opportunity, because we live in our minds and not in the world, to always outpicture and see the experiences of life in a very positive way. That's not always easy. In conventional religion, we learned a variety of things. And one of the things that we teach in New Thought, and one of the things that we believe is very fundamental, is the fact that the collective and creative consciousness of all of us together has an effect on all of those around us. And that if one or two or three change their way of thinking, become positive and creative, see the positive aspects of life, and claim that great and wonderful things will happen. In a new year, we have an opportunity to look at our lives and to decide whether our lives are the way that we want them to be. Perhaps yours is. Perhaps you're happy and fulfilled. Perhaps you're at a point in life where you want to be. But if you're not, if there are difficulties, if there are challenges, if there's unhappiness, if there are circumstances and situations in your life that you are not pleased with, you have an opportunity now, in this new year, now at this present moment, to change your way of thinking and to become positive in your thought process. And by doing that, open a creative channel in your life so that new ideas, thoughts, and directions can come to put you in the place that you want to be. It's been said that we all live in this life experience, and many of us live in it in an experience much like a waiting room. We wait for things to happen, and because we wait, the experiences of our lives never manifest in the way that we would like them to. Some of us started as young people waiting for ourselves to get out of school. We wanted out of school. When we got out of school, we got married. When we were married, we were waiting until the right job came. The children came, we wait until the children grow up. The children grow up, we wait until we retire. And then, as we retire, we look back on our lives, and at different times in our lives, we look at the experiences, and we realize that life has passed us by and that we've spent our time in the waiting room instead of experiencing life. The thought process, the process of our creative mind is the vehicle through which we can attain the things that we want to attain, be the creative people that we want to be, and build the lives that we want to have. We have a great opportunity with our life experience now, especially at this new year, to focus in on how our minds operate and whether or not the operation of your mind is really the way that you want it to be, whether it's really the thought that you want to have, and whether those thoughts are creating the environment that you want to experience. Jesus, the great way shower, throughout Scripture tells us and invites us to have eyes to see and ears to hear. If we have eyes to hear, eyes to see, and ears to hear beyond the appearances of life, we can create an environment that is different than the one that we know. And we have that choice. We have that opportunity. But if we spend our life looking back, if we spend our life in the waiting room, if we continue to think the thoughts that we think, and we don't change the way that we think to direct our thoughts in a positive and creative way, we will experience the creation of our minds. Many of you have talked to people who have been ill and have visited the doctor. And one of the things that strikes me as interesting is that I frequently hear people who say that they've gone to the doctor and that they have a certain condition, and that the doctor has told them that they have the worst condition that he's ever seen. It's almost like they're saying it as a point of pride, a competitive issue in life, that they have something that no one else has that's worse than anybody else has. That creative power, that creative strength that they're giving to the thought process is creating the environment that they're living in. And they are claiming that illness, they are strengthening that illness, they are empowering that illness, and it is influencing their lives. If, on the other hand, they were physically ill, and in the midst of their physical illness, they decided, yes, I'm sick, yes, I have this condition, but I choose to see beyond the condition, beyond the physical illness. I claim to see myself as well. I know that I will be well. I know that I am well. And make that affirmation and that truth a reality in their life. That creative thought becomes dynamic. That creative thought becomes creative, and that creative thought brings into their manifestation what they have brought out of their own creative mind. What do you think? What do you talk about when you talk to your friends on the telephone? What is it that you see when you read that newspaper, when you hear of something taking place in someone else's life or in your life? Do you see it in a negative way, in a terrible way? Do you affirm the negative experience and talk about it, giving it power and strength? Or do you see beyond it? And do you see the opportunity to enfold it in a new way of thinking, in a new thought process? The choice is always ours. The choice is always ours to move from the waiting room of life, to get out of the experiences where we just sit and stay, and we never, ever move. A number of years ago, a lady came to our church for counseling. She had experienced a loss, and she told me that her husband had died, and that in her husband's death, she had suffered a great deal. She talked to me in about 3 counseling sessions, and in the 3rd counseling session, it became clear to me that this lady was looking at something that may have happened in the distant past. And so I asked her, when did your husband die? 1957, she said. This woman had lost her husband in 1957, but because of the power of her mind and thought process, she had allowed herself to stay in the experience, and it was as alive in 1957 as it was as alive now as it was in 1957. That's the creative power of mind. Mind had robbed her by her own doing of her entire life from 1957 to this point, when in fact in 1957 she could have chosen to acknowledge the situation, the circumstance, could have gotten the help and the support, and could have moved on with her life. I don't know what you face in life. I don't know what this year of 1994 will bring you. I don't know what is going to be your life experience, but I know that whatever your life experience may be, by changing the perception and the thought about it, by changing your ideas and your thinking, by changing that, you can change the influence that those events and experiences have on your life. And when you do that, your life can become a marvelous and magnificent experience, not because you avoid the difficulties, not because you never get sick, not because of any of the things that you will not experience, but because no matter what you experience, no matter what takes place in your life, no matter where you go, you will be able to deal with the circumstance and situation in a creative and powerful way. We know that's true. The power of mind, the power of the creative force of mind can determine the life that you live. Words and thoughts have molding power, so let us careful be, knowing that we're building our eternity. You build your eternity with each word, thought, and deed, and by changing your words and thoughts, the deeds of your life and the quality of your life can change dramatically. We'd like to invite you to pause with us at this point in the program for a moment of quiet reflection and prayer. We believe in prayer as a centering force, an opportunity to come together in love and light, and so we invite you to join with us in just a moment of prayer. Eternal God, we gather our hearts and minds together in the needs of others. We ask that you would touch each need in each life, whether the need be physical, spiritual, psychological, emotional, or material. We ask simply that you would touch each life experience, each one, with your divine love, and that you would bring into their life experience that which they need most for their realization of greater good and spiritual understanding. We ask these things in the name of faith, in the name of hope, in the name of divine love. Amen. Iris, do you have some comments about what we just talked about?
That was a very interesting talk, Michael, and I think it's so mind-boggling that everything is created by thought, and I know you teach that in your church, and I have heard you say it
hundreds of times.
I very much agree with you, but could you elaborate on that, how our thoughts do create?
Well, thought is the creative force of the universe, and one of the things that we've been taught and we believe so often is that God is, in a traditional sense, a spiritual being high in the sky in heaven, and that he looks like us and talks like us, and in reality that may be true, but the very core of the creative power that we have and the creative power that we enjoy is that God created us in His image. And God is creative power. God is mind. Religious science and some of the other New Thought movements actually talk about it as divine mind, talk about God as divine mind, divine intelligence. And so whatever else the divine power may be, it is mind, it is intelligence, it's creative, and we have that same creative power because we're created in that image.
It's unfortunate that we don't realize that more, and I think that as we go through problems in life, we realize that we create our own problems and we create our own solutions with the stimulus of the help of others. But the collective consciousness is a very challenging idea. Could you talk about that?
Well, the collective consciousness is really the sum of the thoughts that are going on in the minds of all people in creation. And so often in the West, we think of only people in the United States. But by the grace of God, we're learning that the United States is not the center of the universe, and that the world is much smaller, and that we're all brothers and sisters. So we have people around the world who have a collective thought, and whether that thought process is positive or negative creates a vibration which is felt and experienced and creates a creative flow. And we believe that the consciousness of the entire planet is changing, and is changing positively. And that's what we call the movement into the New Age, into the Aquarian Age. We believe that the 2,000 years of the Christian church has brought us to this point of consciousness, universal consciousness around the planet, and that we're coming into a magnificent new age of enlightenment and understanding. And so it's a wonderful time to be here, even though some people see it as negative. The collective consciousness is positive.
That's a very exciting concept, that because there's so much trouble going on in the world, there's so much happening, and I know that we think evolution has been stepped up in a sense, and all these things are happening, but if we can keep our minds clear on the fact that they're happening for a positive purpose, then I think that would make everyone be more comfortable with all the vast changes that are occurring.
Absolutely. We are at a point of accelerated evolution because we're at a point in time of moving into a new age, and the changes that we see on the planet are great and wonderful. We would never have thought that some of the things that have happened in the last few years would happen in terms of unifying us, destroying negative influences and governments and so forth. But what we're seeing really is birth pangs. And the birthing process appears to be a very painful one, but it's not.
The birth of the new age.
The birth of the new age, exactly.
That's a wonderful concept. Another thing that's very exciting is the fact that when we go over in death, we continue to create. Now, I know that we don't keep the same body, the mind doesn't go with us, but that kernel or that nucleus of the person goes over, and that creates on the inner the environment there. I heard you saying that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we take the same level of consciousness into the afterlife that we had here. So if we have difficulties here, we're going to have difficulties there, which will be worked out. But it is a conscious transition, and we certainly believe that everyone makes that transition in a very conscious way, and that the thought process, the creative wisdom that we have, and the ability that we have to create intelligence and life within us goes on, even after we give up this body and we go into a purely spiritual realm.
Well, I know that everything is created, that we create this like a core energy, and we carry that over. And then, how does that work then? The energy that we take over in death, because I know death is very frightening for almost everyone. People dread death, and you in your church services speak of death often, but in a positive way.
Right. I think death is a wonderful experience if we could learn to look at it in that way. And I've said to you many times before, I truly enjoy funeral services because it's an opportunity to give people assurance. I think the energy that we have in life is that divine spark of intelligence, that indwelling presence of the divine that we believe resides in every human heart, not just Christians and Jews, but Muslims and people of every faith or people of no faith. That divine presence is there whether it's acknowledged or not. And that, coupled with our individual intelligence and the creative power of our mind, creates the energy that enfolds us and encircles us. And when we step out of this physical experience, we step into a purely spiritual experience without this physical body, and the energy force that we take with us has a vibration that's created by our own thought process. And that process can be either positive or negative. If it happens to be negative, we reap the outcoming or the outpicturing of that, but we overcome it. It's nothing permanent.
A thought just occurred to me that newspapers and magazines are so filled with bad news. Would you recommend that everyone limit their viewing of the television news and reading the newspapers?
No, I'd say the opposite. I think people should read the newspapers and watch the news and build their own inner strength and thought process to be positive about what's going on. We've said for a long time that a newspaper is the greatest prayer journal in the world. Pick up a newspaper and you have hundreds of things to pray about and meditate about. So pick up the newspaper and look at the worst thing that you can see and see in it the fact that God is going to resolve it, that things are going to take care of themselves, and that there is a divine purpose in it, and send healing and light to those people, especially people who are experiencing difficult times or tragedies in their life. It's a wonderful opportunity to send a vibration or a thought, a creative thought, into their experience. So even though the experience is devastating, that thought or that prayer can be so empowering and strengthening. And think of what would happen if for every negative newspaper article, there were tens of thousands of people praying, meditating, and sending strength and healing. A lot of things would be resolved, and it would be a wonderful experience. But for people who find that reading the newspaper and watching television creates too much of a negative influence, then they need to build their mental skills and build their spiritual strength so that they're able to read and see those things and send strength to it. See beyond the surface of it. That's
Are you talking about reinforcing our own inner resources through prayer and meditation?
Absolutely, absolutely. It's just like building up the spirit or building up the thought process is exactly like building up the body. We do it through exercise and repetition. And the more we exercise, the better at it we get. Problems are an example. If you have a mathematician, you bring to that man or woman the greatest problems and they solve them. And when they solve that problem, they are waiting for you to bring something else to them that's a bigger problem. That's what we need to do in life. We need to be the kind of people that solve the problems and that have the ability to welcome the problems in our lives because they're going to come. And out of every problem and every difficulty, we grow and we learn and we expand, and we are able to be better, more spiritual people.
So I hear you saying that if we use our energy toward putting things away from us and trying to stay clear of bad news or anything of that type, then we're using that energy ourselves in a negative way. I hear you in a sense saying
we
that.
We are, but some people are just ready for that. And I think they need to strengthen themselves and then be able to move on. One of the things that we talk about often in our church is that we should go into the places, and it's a basic Christian tenet as well, go into the places of need, into the worst places, and take a vibration of peace and love. It's not a great gift to be loving in a loving environment, but to take a loving environment into a negative one, and to take that thought process, that creative force.
It's a wonderful thought that we have control of our own destiny. I hear you saying we create or make our own destiny through our mind, through the power of our mind. How about the people who are incapacitated in their minds? What kind of, would you say that's a certain type of karma, or would you say, what would you say about that?
No, people who have mental incapacities, people who have difficulties, especially in our culture, we see people aging and lose their faculties very often. Those people are perfectly all right. We think they're not. They're perfectly all right because God loves them and loves us and loves us all in the same way, and so God would never abandon us. Those people are so immersed in something that we don't know or understand. They're so deeply involved. And what I believe in end-of-life experiences, why so many people lose their faculties, is because there's great spiritual work that needs to be done before they leave this plane of existence. They don't need to care about the clothes that they wear or what their name is or who Aunt Mary is. They need to deal with the spiritual realities of their impending transition. And God, in His infinite wisdom, has allowed them this time to do that. And so they're perfectly all right. Keep them comfortable, keep their environment clean, and don't worry about them because they're safe in the hands of God and infinite intelligence, and they are working something out.
So we don't have to worry about being an Alzheimer's patient. We just know that we're going into our own time of...
That's right. And I believe that our consciousness it continues. Maybe we don't understand it because we always want to be on the conscious level. And of course, we're not saying anything about the cause, and the karmic issues, I think, are not important. What's important is to know that those people are well and that they're all right, and that their love is the same, their personhood is the same, their identity is the same, but what we're seeing of them is different.
Mm-hmm. How about those who come in with incapacities, children who are autistic, children who are mongoloid and don't think clearly, and not all children have those problems, but when we come in with those critical problems where our minds don't function.
Right. People who come in with difficulties have a tremendous opportunity, and we believe they choose that environment and have chosen it in the spiritual side of life, in spirit, and have chosen to have this life experience in that form. And they have a wonderful opportunity for overcoming. They have a magnificent opportunity to touch the lives of others and to work through the process of sharing with everyone the fact that we're not all the same, and that in our differentness we are similar in the fact that God loves us all and we're all fine.
Wonderful, thank you. I love your answers, and I'd like to say to the audience that we thank you for joining us. We hope you'll be able to join us regularly, and if you have questions you'd like answered on this show, then let us hear from you. We feel that it's such an important time for for deeper spiritual awareness. We hope that we're able to help you toward that goal.